Good day, dear friends. Welcome to Aunt Betty's Stories. Here I share life stories and emotions. It was a quiet night. The kind of night where you can hear the clock ticking in the other room, and the faint hum of the refrigerator feels louder than it should. The lights were off and I was half asleep, drifting somewhere between dreams and wakefulness, when I heard it, a whisper. First I thought I imagined it. Then I heard it again, clearer this time. My husband's voice, low and careful. He was sitting at the edge of the bed, phone in hand. The faint blue light of the screen painted his face, and I saw his lips moving. It took me a moment to understand what he was saying, and when I did, my heart stopped. He was whispering my card's PIN number, the same 4 digits I had told him just once months ago, when I was too sick to get up from bed and asked him to bring me some medicine. I never thought about it again after that night. But now he was whispering those numbers in the dark, as if memorizing them. I didn't move. I just lay there, still as stone, listening. He whispered the numbers again, slower this time. Then there was silence. A silence so heavy that I could hear my own heartbeat thudding in my chest. I wanted to believe there was some reason. Maybe he was just checking something. Maybe I was overreacting. But in that moment, one cold, simple thought filled my mind. He doesn't trust me. Or worse, he's hiding something. I didn't say a word. I just smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hides confusion, fear, and disbelief all at once, and turned on my side, pretending to sleep. But inside, my heart was trembling. That night changed something in me. It wasn't just about the PIN. It was about what it meant, the whisper of doubt, the quiet fear that maybe the man I had shared my life with for more than 20 years wasn't the same man anymore. As the night stretched on, I lay awake, staring into the darkness, replaying his whisper over and over in my mind. For small numbers, but they echoed louder than any argument. I told myself I would ask him in the morning, but morning came and I couldn't. Because when he smiled at me, pouring tea like he did every day, saying "Good morning, love," so gently, I couldn't tell if it was real anymore. That's when I knew. Something had changed. Maybe in him, maybe in me. But the peace we once had was gone, replaced by questions I was too afraid to ask. And that was how it began. A single whisper in the dark that shook the quiet world I had built. I always thought that after 60, life would slow down in a way that felt peaceful. And for a long time it did. Our mornings had a rhythm. He would wake up before me, always the early riser, and I'd hear the faint whistle of the kettle from the kitchen. I'd stay in bed for a few minutes, eyes half open, just listening to the sounds of our little world waking up. The kettle, the clink of cups, the quiet hum of the ceiling fan. Then he'd come in with 2 mugs of tea, one for him, one for me. He always handed mine to me with both hands like it was something precious. "Careful, it's hot," he'd say every single morning, as if I didn't already know. But I loved that he said it. It made me feel looked after. We'd sit by the window, the 2 of us, sipping tea in silence. Outside, the neighborhood would slowly come alive. The sound of a distant rooster, a few cars starting up, children running to catch their school bus. Inside, it was just us. No rush, no noise, no plans, just 2 people who had shared a lifetime together. After retirement, we learned to fill our days with small, quiet routines. He loved tending to the little vegetable garden at the back of the house. I loved keeping the kitchen neat and bright, arranging flowers in jars and writing short notes in my diary. Small thoughts that no one else would ever read. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. We had enough food, enough laughter, enough peace. And in those moments, I truly believed we had everything that mattered. Sometimes he'd sit on the veranda, newspaper in hand, calling out little updates. "Tom's son got married," he'd say, or "They're predicting rain this weekend." I just nod, pretending to listen, half smiling. These were the ordinary moments that built our life, simple, repetitive, but full of quiet warmth. Evenings were my favorite. He'd turn on the radio, tune it to an old station that played songs from our younger days. Sometimes, if he was in the mood, he'd reach for my hand and say, "Come on, let's dance a little." I'd laugh and tell him, "We're too old for that." But I always danced anyway. Slowly, gently, our feet moving in small circles on the living room floor. No music could ever be sweeter than those moments. People think love fades with age, but I don't believe that. It just becomes quieter, softer, steadier. It hides in gestures, in glances, in the way he'd remind me to take my medicine, or I'd fuss over his favorite shirt being ironed. That's what love looks like when you've lived long enough to know it's not the grand gestures that matter. But still, even in the calmest waters there are ripples. And looking back now, I realize there were moments, small fleeting moments that hinted at something changing. A phone call he stepped outside to answer. A new habit of keeping his wallet close even inside the house. Little things I noticed but didn't question because questioning felt like breaking the peace we had built. And after so many years, peace felt like the most precious thing we owned. That's how it always begins, doesn't it? Not with shouting or anger, but with silence, small silences that grow over time, like cracks in a wall you pretend not to see. I didn't know then that those quiet cracks were leading me toward that night. The night when a whisper would shake everything I believed about us. It started so quietly that, at first, I didn't even notice. Maybe that's how change always comes into long marriages. Not with noise but with silence. He began spending more time outside. Some days, he'd say he was going to the market or to visit an old friend. He'd come home an hour later than usual, still smiling, but his eyes seemed far away. When I asked what kept him, he would answer, "Oh, I just stopped by to chat." And I believed him. Why wouldn't I? After all, we had built a life on trust. We never had secrets, at least that's what I thought. But there were small things. He used to tell me everything, what he bought, who he met, what they talked about. Now his stories were shorter, like the details no longer mattered. Once I noticed a faint smell of perfume on his shirt, not mine. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe someone at the shop had brushed past him. You see, when you love someone for so long, you learn to protect the version of them you believe in. He also started keeping his phone close. It used to lie anywhere, on the counter, on the table, even forgotten on the bed. But now it was always in his pocket. Even at home. When it rang, he would step away to answer it. Sometimes he'd lower his voice, saying, "It's just the bank," or "Just someone asking for directions." And I'd smile and nod, though a quiet unease had started to settle in my chest. I didn't want to be the suspicious wife. At our age, I thought we were past that, past jealousy, past doubt. But the mind has a way of making stories out of silence. And every time he pulled away, even slightly, my heart filled in the blanks with fear. We still shared tea in the mornings. We still talked about little things, the garden, the news, the weather. But between the words, there was a thin wall of distance. It wasn't coldness exactly, just something unspoken, hanging in the air like mist. I tried to tell myself he was just distracted. Maybe he was worried about our savings or his health. He had been visiting the doctor recently. Nothing serious, just checkups. But he never shared the reports with me. When I asked, he'd say, "It's all fine, don't worry." Those 3 words, "don't worry," began to sound less like comfort and more like a door closing softly between us. One afternoon, while folding laundry, I found an unfamiliar receipt in his shirt pocket. It wasn't anything shocking, just a jewelry store bill. But it wasn't for me. It was dated last week, and the item listed was a gold chain. My heart fluttered with confusion. Who was it for? Why hadn't he mentioned it? I placed the paper back, exactly where I found it. I didn't confront him. Instead, I waited, hoping he would tell me himself. But days passed and he didn't. In those quiet moments, when I stood at the sink washing dishes or watered the flowers he once tended so carefully, I found my thoughts turning dark. Had he changed? Or had I simply never noticed who he truly was? And yet, despite the unease, part of me still believed there had to be an explanation. He wasn't careless or cruel. He was a man who had held my hand through every hardship, the births, the losses, the long nights when money was tight. He had stayed beside me when my health wavered, when I lost my parents. That kind of man doesn't just turn cold overnight. So I waited. I smiled. I carried on with our routines, breakfast at 8, the afternoon nap, his tea at 4. But inside I started to keep a small part of my heart locked away. A part that was preparing for something I couldn't yet name. Looking back now, I can see how the mind begins to whisper long before the truth arrives. It was as if life itself was warning me to listen. And soon, very soon I would. The house had never been truly silent before. Even in the stillest moments, there had always been the sound of us. A door closing, his laugh from another room, the rustle of a newspaper. Now the silence felt different. It wasn't empty, it was heavy. He had begun rising earlier, sometimes before dawn. When I woke, I'd hear the front door click softly shut. If I asked where he'd gone, he'd smile and say, "Just for a walk." That smile still looked kind, but something behind it had changed, like a curtain drawn halfway. He started keeping a small notebook, always tucked beside his chair. When I teased him about becoming a writer, he chuckled. "Just some numbers," he said. I didn't ask more. After all, we were old enough to give each other space. That's what love meant to me. Not questioning every secret. Yet sometimes when he wrote in that notebook, his shoulders would tighten, and he'd lower his head as if afraid I might read over his shoulder. And when I walked past him, he'd close it quickly, pretending to stretch or sip his tea. It was a strange feeling to share a house, a life, and yet sense a distance growing quietly between the walls. I tried to close that distance with kindness. I cooked his favorite dishes, left small notes on the fridge the way I used to when we were younger. But lately I'd find those notes untouched, still stuck where I'd left them. Little things that once brought smiles now passed unnoticed. One evening it began to rain. The air smelled of wet earth, and I thought he'd love to see it. Looking back now, I can see how the mind begins to whisper long before the truth arrives. It was as if life itself was warning me to listen, and soon, very soon I would. The house had never been truly silent before. Even in the stillest moments, there had always been the sound of us. A door closing, his laugh from another room, the rustle of a newspaper. Now the silence felt different. It wasn't empty, it was heavy. He had begun rising earlier, sometimes before dawn. When I woke, I'd hear the front door click softly shut. If I asked where he'd gone, he'd smile and say, "Just for a walk." That smile still looked kind, but something behind it had changed, like a curtain drawn halfway. He started keeping a small notebook, always tucked beside his chair. When I teased him about becoming a writer, he chuckled. "Just some numbers," he said. I didn't ask more. After all, we were old enough to give each other space. That's what love meant to me. Not questioning every secret. Yet sometimes when he wrote in that notebook, his shoulders would tighten, and he'd lower his head as if afraid I might read over his shoulder. And when I walked past him, he'd close it quickly, pretending to stretch or sip his tea. It was a strange feeling to share a house, a life, and yet sense a distance growing quietly between the walls. I tried to close that distance with kindness. I cooked his favorite dishes, left small notes on the fridge the way I used to when we were younger. But lately I'd find those notes untouched, still stuck where I'd left them. Little things that once brought smiles now passed unnoticed. One evening it began to rain. The air smelled of wet earth, and I thought he'd love to see it. He always used to say, "Nothing tastes better than tea in the rain." So I made 2 cups and carried them to the veranda. But he wasn't there. His slippers were gone from their usual place by the door. I waited with the cups cooling in my hands. Half an hour later, I heard his footsteps returning, slow, careful. He came in, drenched from the rain. When I asked where he'd been, he hesitated just a second too long before saying, "Just out for a bit of fresh air." He smiled, but his eyes darted away. That night, after he went to bed, I sat alone at the kitchen table. The rain kept falling outside, and the sound felt almost like a lullaby and a warning at once. For the first time, I felt truly afraid of losing him. Not to death or illness, but to some distance I couldn't cross. I thought of all the years we had lived, the laughter, the small quarrels, the moments of quiet understanding. Could all of that disappear because of a secret I didn't understand? He was still kind, still gentle. But now when he looked at me, it was as if he was holding something back. Not anger, not guilt, but worry. A worry I couldn't name. Some nights I'd wake up and find him sitting at the edge of the bed, staring into the dark. He'd say he couldn't sleep, that his back hurt. But the way his hand tightened around the phone in his lap told another story. I began noticing how often he checked the calendar, marking small dates. He would circle something and then quietly cross it out the next morning. I asked once, "What are you counting down to?" He smiled. Nothing important. But it was important. I could feel it in the air, that invisible shift when something in life is about to change. I tried to pray to calm my thoughts. Maybe it was me imagining things. Maybe it was just old age making me restless. But deep down I knew. A storm was coming. And it was already inside our house. I began to notice how my days revolved around his silences. Every sound in the house seemed to depend on him. The creak of his chair, the closing of a door, the shuffle of his slippers across the floor. When he was quiet, everything else felt muted too. He spoke less now. Breakfast was still shared, but our words were smaller. How did you sleep? Fine. Do you want more tea? No, thank you. That was all. The kind of small talk that fills space but not hearts. I tried to ask gentle questions, hoping he would open up. Are you worried about something? Is your health all right? He would smile, that calm smile, the one I had once found comforting, and say, you worry too much. And then he would pat my hand as though I were a child, not his wife of 40 years. I stopped asking after a while, but the questions never stopped living inside me. There was one evening when I almost said everything. The doubts, the sleepless nights, the strange ache that had settled in my chest. He was reading by the window, his glasses slipping down his nose. The light from the lamp touched his face softly. I looked at him and thought, if I speak now, maybe everything will come back to normal. But my voice refused to come out. I just smiled and asked if he wanted dinner early. I think part of me was afraid of the answer. Afraid that the world I'd built, the quiet, familiar one, might break if I dared to look too closely. And so I waited. I waited for him to tell me something, anything. I waited for signs that my fears were foolish. But the waiting stretched into days, then weeks. He began to carry 2 wallets. One, the old brown one I had given him years ago. The other, a newer black one that he kept tucked carefully in his pocket. I pretended not to see. Yet each time I washed his clothes, I felt that second wallet's absence like a secret between us. Sometimes I would find him at the dining table counting something, coins, papers I never knew. When I entered, he would fold everything away. He'd say, just sorting things out. Those words meant nothing, but his tone made them sound final. I started keeping my own notebook, not with numbers or accounts, but with small memories. What he said, what he didn't say, what I felt when I saw him walking away down the lane. I wrote quietly, without anger. Writing helped me breathe. One afternoon, I found him asleep in the armchair. His face looked tired, almost fragile. A small piece of paper slipped from his hand and fell onto the floor. It was a reminder note, my name written on it, followed by those 4 digits. My card's pin. Nothing else. Just that. My heart fluttered in my chest. Why would he need that? He wasn't forgetful. He remembered everything, birthdays, anniversaries, even the date of our first trip together. So why write down my pin? I placed the note back quietly. That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, listening to his breathing beside me, steady and calm. And I thought, what if the man I love is doing something behind my back? The thought felt like a betrayal even to think it. So I prayed instead. I prayed for clarity, for truth, for the courage to face whatever was waiting in the dark. Days later came that night, the one I still remember in every detail. When I woke to the sound of his whisper, the moment that changed everything. That night is still clear in my mind, clearer than most days that came after. It was one of those calm evenings when everything looked ordinary, yet something felt different in the air. He had gone to bed earlier than usual. I stayed in the kitchen washing the last cup, just listening to the ticking of the old wall clock. It was the same clock we bought right after our retirement. He said we'd never be late for anything again. But that night, time itself felt heavier. When I finally went to bed, he was already lying on his side, facing away from me. I whispered softly, "Good night." He didn't reply, but I saw the faint movement of his shoulder. I thought maybe he was already asleep. So I turned off the lamp, laid down beside him, and closed my eyes. But I couldn't sleep. My heart was too restless. I don't know how long I lay there, maybe half an hour, when I heard a faint rustle. Then in the stillness of the dark, came a whisper. My name first. Then slowly my card's pin. Each number spoken clearly, almost rehearsed. And then silence. I didn't move. I didn't open my eyes. I just lay there, breathing quietly, my hands gripping the blanket. My husband, the man I trusted with everything, had just whispered something that felt like a secret I wasn't meant to hear. He stood up gently, thinking I was asleep. I heard the soft sound of the drawer opening, then the click of his phone camera. I realized he was taking a picture of something, my bank card. The sound cut through the dark like thunder in my heart. He left the room quietly, his slippers barely making a sound. I waited until I heard the faint noise of the living room light switch, then the front door unlocking. The cold night air slipped in for a second before the door closed again. I sat up, trembling. My heart wasn't just breaking, it was confused, scared, refusing to believe. This was the same man who made me tea every morning. The same man who held my hand when we crossed the street. The same man who had built a quiet life beside me, brick by brick. Why was he doing this? Why now? What could possibly make him sneak out like that, whispering numbers that belonged only to me? I sat there for hours. No tears came, just a heavy stillness inside me. When he returned, I quickly lay down again, pretending to be asleep. He moved quietly, placed something back in the drawer, and then climbed into bed beside me. His breathing slowed, peaceful. Mine did not. That night I didn't sleep at all. I watched the dawn crawl in through the curtains, painting soft light on the man lying next to me. And I couldn't tell if I was looking at a stranger or the person I had shared my entire life with. The next morning I cooked breakfast like always. He smiled at me the same way, gentle and familiar. He asked, "You didn't sleep well?" I forced a smile. Just couldn't stop thinking. He didn't ask what I was thinking about. He just nodded and read the newspaper. The same calmness that used to comfort me now felt like a wall I couldn't climb. While he was in the garden, I checked the drawer. My card was there. Everything seemed untouched. Maybe I had misunderstood. Maybe I had imagined everything. But deep down I knew what I had heard. Those numbers whispered in the dark. You can't mistake that. I tried to distract myself. I cleaned the kitchen, watered the plants, even baked his favorite lemon cake. But when I walked past his phone on the table, I froze. The screen lit up with a message, just a name and a small icon. A woman's name I didn't recognize. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Sometimes silence tells you everything words can't. I stepped outside and sat under the old mango tree. The breeze was gentle, but my heart felt heavy. I thought about the years we'd spent together. Raising children, building a home, growing old side by side. Was all of it now just a memory waiting to fade? I looked toward the house where he was sitting peacefully, trimming his plants as if nothing had changed. And I whispered to myself, if love can turn quiet, can it also turn blind? The morning after that silent storm, something in me changed. I didn't want to keep guessing anymore. Fear was eating me from inside, not just fear of what he might have done, but fear of losing what we had built together. He was sitting at the kitchen table, reading his newspaper as always. The smell of tea filled the room. It was such a normal scene that it hurt. I sat down across from him and said softly, "Can we talk about something?" He folded the paper slowly. "Of course." I looked at his face, the same familiar wrinkles, the same gentle eyes. But I also saw a shadow behind them. "I need to ask you something," I whispered. "And I want you to be honest with me." He nodded, silent. "I heard you last night," I said quietly. His hand stopped halfway to the teacup. "You whispered something, my card's pin. You took my card from the drawer. I saw you leave the house." For a moment time stood still. Then he sighed. Not the sigh of guilt, but of someone who has carried something heavy for too long. He looked down and said, "I was hoping you wouldn't hear." My heart sank. So it was true. He had done it. But before I could speak, he continued, his voice trembling. "I didn't want to scare you, but I needed to withdraw some money for something I didn't want you to know yet." I stared at him, confused. "For what?" He looked up, and for the first time I saw tears in his eyes. "For you," he said. "For your birthday. I was trying to buy back that gold bangle you sold 2 years ago. The one you gave up when we needed money for our son's surgery." The world fell silent. All my fears, all my suspicions, they shattered in an instant. The whisper in the dark, the picture of the card, the secret trip out. He wasn't stealing from me. He was trying to give something back. I didn't know what to say. Tears filled my eyes, blurring his face. He reached across the table, gently taking my hand. "I wanted to surprise you," he said. "You've done so much for everyone. For me, for the kids. And I just wanted to give you something that reminded you that you still matter." I felt ashamed. Ashamed for doubting him. Ashamed for letting fear twist love into suspicion. He pulled a small envelope from his pocket. Inside was a simple receipt. A payment slip from the pawn shop in town. He had already made half the payment. I looked at him, speechless. He smiled softly. "I know you always said you didn't care about jewelry, but that bangle, it meant something. You wore it on our wedding day. I thought maybe it would make you smile again. I covered my face with both hands. It was too much, the love, the guilt, the relief. I whispered, I thought you were betraying me. He chuckled sadly. If I had to betray you, it would only be to make you happy, he said. For a long time we just sat there holding hands. The tea grew cold, but our silence was warm again. The kind that doesn't separate two people but heals them. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened. It wasn't just about the whisper or the card. It was about how fragile trust can be. How even love that lasts a lifetime can tremble in one moment of doubt. When he came to bed, I turned to him and said, I forgive you. He looked surprised. For what? For keeping a secret, I said softly, and for loving me in a way that scared me. He smiled, his eyes glistening. Then I forgive you too, he whispered. For what? I asked. For thinking you needed a reason to forgive me. We both laughed quietly. And in that laughter, years of fear, loneliness, and misunderstanding melted away. That night, when he whispered again, it wasn't numbers. It was my name. And for the first time in many nights, I smiled in my sleep. The days that followed were gentler. Something in the air had shifted, a peace that comes only after truth is spoken. We didn't talk much about that night anymore. There was no need to. Some truths don't need to be repeated. They just need to be lived with. He went back to his little routines, watering the plants, feeding the birds, reading the paper with his glasses low on his nose. But now, every time our eyes met across the breakfast table, there was something softer between us. A shared understanding that love isn't always made of perfect moments. Sometimes, it's built on mistakes that are forgiven. I began to notice little things he did, small gestures I once overlooked. The way he folded my shawl neatly at night, the way he'd secretly refill my medicine box when it was low, the way he'd turn on my favorite radio station before I even asked. These were not grand declarations of love. They were whispers of care, the kind that never needed words. One afternoon, while sitting in the garden, I asked him, Were you scared that night? He smiled. A little. I thought you might wake up. I did, I whispered. He looked surprised, then laughed softly. You did? Yes, I said. And for a few hours I thought the worst. He leaned back, thoughtful. I think that's what life does sometimes, he said quietly. It gives us moments that test whether we'll choose fear or faith. I held his hand. And we chose both, didn't we? He nodded. But we ended with faith. 2 weeks later, he called me into the living room. On the table was a small velvet box, the color of deep maroon. Go on, he said, smiling shyly. Open it. My hands trembled as I lifted the lid. Inside lay the gold bangle, polished, gleaming, exactly as it looked the day he had slipped it on my wrist 50 years ago. I touched it gently, tears filling my eyes. How did you? I finished the payment, he said. And the shopkeeper remembered us. He said he'd kept it safe, just in case the old couple came back for it one day. I laughed through my tears. I placed the bangle on my wrist again, and in that moment I wasn't 60 anymore. I was 20, standing beside him under the old wedding arch, promising to trust, to love, to forgive. He looked at me and said softly, Now it's back where it belongs. I reached out, touching his cheek. And so are you, I whispered. It's strange, we spend our lives thinking love is about grand gestures, about passion and surprise. But growing old teaches you something else. Love isn't about perfection. It's about patience. It's about seeing someone's flaws and still choosing them. Every day. That night taught me something important. Trust can be broken, but it can also be rebuilt. If both hearts are willing to stay open. Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's quiet strength. It's the choice to see love even when pain clouds your eyes. Sometimes when I lie beside him now, I think about that night, the whisper in the dark that once filled me with fear. And I smile, because it was that whisper that reminded me of something I had almost forgotten. That love at its deepest is not about what we keep secret, but what we are willing to understand. A few months later, life went back to its calm rhythm. Our children visited, the house was full of laughter again, and evenings were filled with the sound of our favorite songs. But sometimes when the house grows quiet again, I still hear his whisper. Not of numbers, not of secrets, but of simple words like, Are you warm enough? Did you take your medicine? Good night, my love. and each whisper feels like a promise kept. I've learned that love doesn't need to shout to be heard. Sometimes it's in the smallest sound, a breath, a word, a look. And if you listen closely, you'll realize that love never really leaves. It just changes its language. It has been several years since that night, the night that once broke me and then rebuilt me in a new way. Time has softened everything, like how the evening sun turns sharp shadows into gold. He and I are older now, slower in our steps but gentler in our words. Sometimes when we sit together on the porch, sipping tea as the world moves quietly around us, I think about how fragile life is. We spend so many years worrying about the wrong things, what people think, what might go wrong, what we might lose. But in the end, all that truly matters is who sits beside you when the noise fades away. When I look at him now, I don't see the man who whispered my pin in the dark. I see the man who stayed, who held my hand through fear, through sickness, through misunderstanding. I see the man who, even when I doubted him, chose to love me anyway. And maybe that's what marriage really is. Not a perfect story, but a series of moments where two people choose each other again and again, even when they don't have to. I used to think trust was something fragile, like a glass that once broken could never be whole again. But life taught me something gentler. Trust isn't glass. It's more like a garden. If you neglect it, it withers. If you care for it, even after a storm, it blooms again. That night could have destroyed us. But instead, it made us see how easily silence can grow between two people who love each other, and how simple it can be to break that silence if one of them just dares to speak first. If I had stayed quiet forever, holding on to my fear, I would have built a wall between us that no truth could cross. But because I asked, because I faced my fear, I found not betrayal but love hiding behind a misunderstanding. That realization changed me. It made me softer. It made me slower to judge, quicker to forgive. And it taught me that even in old age, love can still surprise you. One morning a few years later, I woke up before him. The light was soft, slipping gently through the curtains. I watched him sleep, peaceful, the corners of his lips slightly lifted, as if he was dreaming of something kind. I thought about all our years together. The laughter, the quiet dinners, the arguments, the forgiveness, the love that never really stopped growing. And I realized something. Life doesn't give us guarantees, but it gives us moments. And sometimes one moment of trust can change the meaning of a lifetime. When he finally opened his eyes, he smiled and said, "Good morning." I smiled back. "Good morning, my whisperer." He laughed softly. "You'll never let me forget that night, will you?" "Never," I said, "because that night reminded me how much you love me." He reached for my hand, squeezed it gently, and said, "And it reminded me how much you trust me." If someone asked me now, after all these years, what love truly means, I would say this. Love isn't about grand gestures. It's not about perfect trust or perfect people. It's about staying, even when doubt enters the room. It's about forgiveness that doesn't need to be earned, and kindness that doesn't need a reason. If you ever find yourself doubting someone you love, don't let fear do the talking. Ask, speak, listen. Because sometimes the truth is not what you expect. It's softer, kinder, more human. When my husband whispered my card's pin that night, my heart froze. But today, when I look back, I realize that moment was not the end of our love. It was the beginning of our understanding. And if this story finds its way to someone's heart, I hope it reminds them too. Trust can bend, love can falter, but forgiveness is the thread that holds everything together. Now, as I sit by the window watching the world move on, I feel a quiet peace in my chest. The kind of peace that comes only after you've lived long enough to know that love doesn't always speak loudly. Sometimes it just whispers softly in the dark. And if you listen with your heart, you'll always know what it means. Love doesn't need perfection, only patience. Even in silence, true hearts will always find their way back to each other. Lots of love, my dear friends. Did you enjoy the story? Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.